Hey YouTube gun people, I want to talk to you today about a couple things. Well, actually just one thing, but it's a big topic. This is the topic of handgun ownership in Massachusetts. Let's talk about a couple things first that I have here on the bench. A couple people asked me why my bench is dirty. My bench is dirty because I use it. This isn't a studio. I don't have a studio. I have a basement. I also am banished here often because I have a wife and two daughters, and so the dog and I come down here to hide out. So it's dirty because it's actually used. This isn't a studio. So what do we got here on the table? Well, I have Smith & Wesson 1911 and a Gary Brommelin MaxCon 5 holster. I think it's one of the finest inside the waistband holsters made. It's got a 10-round Chip McCormick power mag in it. This weapon has been safety checked. And here I have a trade knife that was built by Stephen Liley from Coal Creek Forge. And this thing is just a dandy. Now what's cool about this knife is it's made actually out of a piece of this number on it. See if you can see that. That number is actually a part number. This is made out of a disc from a piece of farming equipment, flattened out, and convex grind. It's a big honker. So back in the day, this is the kind of knife people would use. It's about the right size handle, the whole bit. For a trade knife, a working knife, this could be for if you're a trapper, for using it for various tasks, chopping off limbs and stuff, or for self-defense. You could imagine this in your hand, maybe a tomahawk in the other hand. You could really go to town on somebody. The dimensions on this thing, I don't even know. Let's see. Yeah, the blade's 9 inches. The handle's about let's see here. Oh, I don't know. Handle's about 4.5 inches. You can see the wood on it's real nice. Real nice knife. Period correct too. Sharp as hell, convex grind. It's tough. Nice knife. Anyway, if you're interested in tomahawks or knives, call up Steve Liley or PM me. I'll send you his email. All right. The real purpose of this video, now that I've blabbed on a lot, is to talk about 1911s in Massachusetts, or just gun ownership in Massachusetts. Let's just safety check this so nobody thinks I'm kidding around. It has been safety checked. This weapon's good to go. I've been going through this issue for a while now of getting a 1911 for competitive purposes, competitive shooting, and trying to get one that's be particularly well suited for competition. This is a fine 1911. I have over 4,000 rounds through this thing. It's not hiccup once. It's highly accurate, highly dependable. I really enjoy it. But you know how you get. You want what you need are two different things. So I want another 1911. Now in the state of Massachusetts, all handguns must pass a arbitrary or constantly changing Attorney General's regulations, and they encompass a few things. You need sort of serial numbers on multiple parts of the firearm. You need to have a loaded chamber indicator. There's one here. You need to pass a drop test. So you have to basically, if you're a manufacturer, submit your firearm. Submit your firearm for testing. They get tested. They can make it onto the Massachusetts roster. Usually not much of a problem. I think most modern handguns would certainly make it if they had changed certain compliance issues. The problem really is, since these are Attorney General regulations rather than laws, it can be a bit of a moving target, so a lot of manufacturers are hesitant to do anything. So in Massachusetts, the only brand new 1911s that you can buy are Smith & Wesson, that's one. SIG. Now the SIG 1911s are really nice, but they're a little bit different sort of profile to them, so they don't necessarily fit in your holster, so that's a bit of an issue, but they're nice. They do make a classic line that's not approved for sale in Massachusetts. So Smith, SIG. You can also buy the Remington 1911, just the first one released, not the enhanced version. I think it's relatively a low end. The Ruger 1911. I'm not a big fan of Ruger firearms, or pistols I should say. Ruger rifles are really good. I like the Ruger 22 rifle and the Ruger Model 1, but otherwise I'm not a fan. And you can buy some Para-Ordnance. Para-Ordnance 1911s are really nice, except I don't like a ramped barrel. I believe they all have ramped barrels. So the Para SSP is a ramped barrel. I'm not a big fan. And the other one is Auto Ordnance, which is really a low-end 1911. It's fine, but it's really not what I want for competition. For competition, you need you should have a beaver tail on it, like this one has here. Let's zoom in a little bit. So a beaver tail on the safety grip. You want to have dovetail sights, so you can change them. Most likely you'd want a fiber optic in the front and like a Bomar in the back. Put a magazine well. So those are really the only external things that you would want, and then everything else is internal. So you do things like get rid of any wiggle in the trigger. This one moves side to side a little bit, lateral movement, up and down, make them tighter. When you cock this thing, you can see there is a bit of travel. See that travel before it fires? You can get that dealt with. Different triggers, so you can customize what this trigger actually looks like and feels like to your finger. You can get a bottom cut here, which I don't believe for me is necessary. My hand feels real comfortable there. And then, so most of the work, besides those external features I talked about, would be all the internals to make the trigger super, super sweet. Okay, and then slide the frame fit. I should say on the Smith & Wesson, having a lot of rounds through this thing, that frame's still not moving. Smith does use forged frames and slides. That doesn't mean cast isn't good. In fact, some of the best frames you can get, for instance from Caspian Arms, are in fact cast. Okay, so casting, it's not your daddy's casting. This is new casting, and then you can customize it as you like. But for me, I'm looking for the minimum. How do you accomplish that? Well, one thing to do. Now I have a Smith & Wesson, so a lot of my wife, in her wisdom, tells me, why don't you just stop moaning about it and just go buy another Smith & Wesson? That's a good point. I might do that. This is a great gun. It could be the base for a custom gun. It has an external extractor. The E-Series has, the full-size E-Series Smith & Wesson has a larger extractor. It's external. SIG, Kimber, a lot of them use external extractors. John Browning's original design was an external extractor. That doesn't bother me really too much. I do like the look of the internal extractor and the fact that it's easier to service. This one's a bit of a pain in the ass to service. You got to push a pin and all that stuff. So that's one way to go. Ideally, though, I would really love to build basically on a Colt frame, a Series 70 Colt. You can't get those in Massachusetts. So, which really brings me to the main point of this discussion, which is the role of gun manufacturers in the whole notion of gun rights within a state. So, my state of Massachusetts, you have to be on that approved roster list. Now, Colt certainly makes a firearm. Their Series 80s would pass all these tests, no problem. provided they put a loader chamber indicator. Now for them, they would just need to make a run of barrels with that cutout in it, for instance, and they'd be compliant. Really, not a big deal. They could even make Series 70s if they had a stronger firing pin in it and a titanium firing. They had a stronger firing pin spring and a titanium firing pin that was light. It would pass a drop test. So a drop test is guns in this position. You drop it on the muzzle, and the inertia shouldn't allow the firing pin to set off the charge in it. And they can make them all. Same with Kimber. Same with STI. All these manufacturers, Les Baer, Ed Brown, Wilson, they won't. It's not just the 1911 makers, it's makers like Glock as well. H&K was the same for a while. They have now made a USP variant. The variant 1 is Massachusetts compliant. You can get that. What I'm trying to say is I'm very disappointed in gun manufacturers abandoning states like Massachusetts, and let me tell you why. And also, I believe it's also true in California. It might be true in other states. I don't know every state's law. The reason is, and I understand the extra money in terms of retooling, etc. But in my mind, it seems like a relatively modest investment given what you are getting in return. First of all, I love Colt firearms. I own a Colt Anaconda. I own a Colt AR-15. The Anaconda is pre-ban. I've had it for a while, so that's why I have it in Massachusetts. It's not made anymore either, but you can't buy any Colt single-action Army pistols in Massachusetts either. So I'm a loyal Colt customer. Many other people love Colts too, would buy one in a heartbeat. The same for Kimber, all the other manufacturers. So one, why are you not interested in this loyal helping very loyal, enthusiastic customers? Why have you abandoned your customer base in this state? Why have you abandoned us in the fight for Second Amendment rights? I'd like to know that. I really would. In my mind, the more people that own firearms, that are legally own firearms and use them in competitions, are ambassadors of firearms, good ambassadors of the sports, only help us in our argument that the Second Amendment is important to uphold, and that it can be upheld in a safe, responsible way. All your Bill of Rights requires responsibility, and we can do this responsibly. So I don't understand it. I really don't. I also don't understand why these manufacturers won't work together with gun shops in Massachusetts. I know for a fact that there's one local dealer who I like a lot, who has on his website, I believe it's to Les Baer, basically a plea to submit firearms for testing, and they'll split the cost of the testing with Les Baer. The whole cost argument is just complete nonsense in terms of for the test itself. I can understand the retooling and everything like that, but I think it'd be pretty damn minimal. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the subject, in particular if you keep in mind while you're responding the point that these manufacturers have really abandoned the Massachusetts consumer and shooter, right? There's no question about it. Colt, Kimber, the high-end shops, Les Baer, etc. Glock. Glock. Glock had a firearm that they submitted them. They were compliant. Massachusetts Attorney General's sent them moaning. They started moaning. So Glock actually went and retrieved them all from the customers they sold them to. But it was a minimal argument. It really was. And I also like to know why the NRA does not a damn thing for us in our state in terms of helping us with this. This is a false use of consumer protection laws, and the NRA has sort of abandoned us. That's really, really disappointing to me as a gun owner. You know, I'm an NRA member. I'm sure many of you are as well, and you know, they don't really do much for us at all, as far as I can see. You know, what if it went to, what if, you know, maybe there should be a time to do a test case, right? Let's have a test case where you know, a gun starts being sold here, and the Glock would have been a perfect example. And then the Attorney General switches its laws. I don't think the Attorney General would have gotten away with that. That whole argument was that the extractor, they were arguing that the extractor's loaded chamber indicator, and the Attorney General's office felt it wasn't sufficient enough. So they either had to paint the top so it sticks out like in a Beretta 92, you can see it better, or put a little piece of metal on that so it actually protrudes further, so you can actually, you can feel it more. On a Glock, when you have a loaded around in the chamber, sure, the extractor goes out, but it's pretty subtle, right? So they could have enhanced that and had a really loyal customer base in Massachusetts, but they didn't. So, you know, I feel that there's, you know, certainly the Attorney General's rules and regulations in the state are completely twisted, and I believe they're illegal. Nobody's actually had the balls to go ahead and challenge them in court. At least that I'm aware of. If they have, I'd like to know what the results are. Two, I don't think the NRA does very much for people in Massachusetts. Three, I'm really, really disappointed by gun manufacturers that have really abandoned us and left us in the lurch. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter. You know, if there's anybody from the gun industry out there listening, I doubt it, but if there is, I would plead to you to you know, please reconsider and think about the possibility that gun shops in Massachusetts will help defray the cost of you submitting your firearms for testing. Yeah, the magazine ban's ridiculous, you know. So I can't have a Glock 17 magazine over 10 rounds unless it was made before 1994. Now, that's really kind of stupid. It's true in other states too. And I'll tell you why it's stupid. There are, so in other words, I can buy 100 10-round magazines, load them all up, stick them all over myself, and I can reload a magazine pretty damn quick. You know, it becomes just a nuisance. And I believe a lot of these gun laws are just nuisance laws where you're just trying to make it such a pain in the ass that eventually people will give up, and by attrition, you'll no longer have gun ownership. All I have to say in that case is fight the power. I don't intend to ever give up my Second Amendment rights, my firearm rights, even in the state of Massachusetts, and I don't intend to move out of the state of Massachusetts and basically retreat and allow these complete idiots to continue their assault on freedom and people's rights. And I also, you know, I find it ironic when a lot of these people making these laws use rights as a political tool. So they want, for instance, an abortion to be a right. Abortion is not a right, okay? It's not. Roe versus Wade is just a decision in the court. It's not a right in the Bill of Rights. They want you to have that. They want you to have rights like gay marriage, which are fine. If you want to have an abortion, that's your life. You deal with your God the way you want to deal with them. If you want to be gay and get married, knock yourself out. Do whatever you want. I don't care, right? But why are you trampling on rights that are already in the Constitution and were from the beginning? You know, in Massachusetts, we just saw in the newspaper that we're going to extend health care to legal immigrants. You know, We can't afford to pay for people that, U.S. citizens here now, but we're going to extend that. I think it's really a matter of kind of buying votes in the long run. And the political processes that affect all these things that we're talking about today, Second Amendment rights in particular, are just really, really dirty. And so we got to really work together, try to get this stomped out. I'd really like to know what people think about contacting firearms makers and asking them why don't they sell in Massachusetts, and see if we could ever make some headway. Thanks.